Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 7 articles in 2 different sections. In the analysis part, we'll first have a comprehensive discussion with respect to the importance of Northeast India, the associated challenges, and the way forward. Then, in the second article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the procedure for the appointment of Supreme Court judges and the concept of collegium system. Then, in the simplified section, we'll have a discussion with respect to 5 different topics from a special perspective of UPSC Prelims 2025, along with the value addition. So stay tuned. Coming to the very first topic of the day, this is with respect to Northeast region, gateway to Southeast Asia. Just before a few days, we had the chief advisor of the Bangladesh interim government, Muhammad Yunus, who referred to India's northeastern region as landlocked. Now, as a kind of an implicit response, we have the Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, who has referred to India's northeast as the gateway to Southeast Asia. And what he has also said is that the northeastern region, it serves as the base for many of the key important government policies, be it the neighborhood first, be it the Act East, or be it the BIMSTEC. Now, what we need to understand is that northeastern region. Now, first of all, why do we call it a northeastern region? Primarily because it serves as a geographical division. It serves as a politico-administrative division. That's the first thing. Second thing is that despite of several advantages, for example, breathtaking landscapes or diverse wildlife, numerous ethnic tribes, rich cultural heritage, this particular region has suffered from a lot of disadvantages. There are very serious issues. For example, weak infrastructure, social unrest, misgovernance, insurgency, right? So that has affected the overall region. Now, what we'll try to do today is we'll first look at the significance of northeastern India. Second, we'll talk about the challenges which this particular region faces. And then we'll go to the way forward. Now, this is going to be a very, very important topic for your mains, right? Now, it is a part of GS2 International Relations and GS3 Economic Development. Now, whenever we talk about the northeastern India, what it is generally referred to as the land of 7 sisters. If you just first look at this particular map. So I initially told you that whenever we talk about the northeastern India, it basically refers to a geographical division and it also refers to politico-administrative division. So you can just see we have this particular area as northeastern India. Now, what you need to understand is that there is a small patch of land, what we generally refer to as Siliguri corridor, which basically connects the mainland India with that to the northeastern India. That you have to remember. Now, if you just look at this particular map, we have these 7 states. For example, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya, Assam, right? Along with that, we also have Sikkim. So this is the 8th state which comprises of the overall northeastern region, right? Second thing which you need to understand is that this particular region, it showcases wide range of physiographic and climatic conditions. That is, it has wide range of physiographic characteristics, be it the mountains, the hills, the plain areas, also wide range of climatic conditions. Next aspect which you need to understand is that this region, according to the Government of India's data, this region has a population, it has a share in the total population to the tune of 3.8. So as a proportion of the total population of the country, the northeastern region has 3.8% of the total population. But it contributes to almost 8% to the geographical area of India, right? That you have to understand. Again, what you need to keep in mind is that this particular region has a dominance of various tribal groups, various ethnicities. And this is what makes this particular region ethnically very diverse. Next aspect is that considering the tribal groups, considering their customs and traditions, their indigenous way of living, the government, that in fact the constitution makers, they basically had this concept of 6 schedule. So we have 4 northeastern states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, right? In which primarily we have a different set of governance through the 6 schedule areas, which provide for a more autonomous governance framework. That you have to understand. Now, see, one thing, this can be really important from the prelims perspective, is that we have different neighboring countries. So this makes this particular region strategically very important, right? So just look at this particular map. We have the country of Myanmar, right? This shares a border of almost 1600 kilometers, 1643 kilometers. Then we have China on the northern side. We have the country of Bhutan. We have Nepal adjoining Sikkim. We have Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh as a adjoining country, it has the longest border with India. If you can just look at this particular map, we have the Indo-Bangladesh border, which is almost 4096 kilometers. Then we have the Indo-China. So this would come at the first place. This would come at the second place. Then we have the third as Indo-Pak. Remember this. Then we have the fourth as Indo-Nepal, right? Almost 1751 kilometers. Then we have Indo-Myanmar. That is fifth. Right? Then what you have to understand is we have the Indo-Bhutan, sixth. And finally, we have the border with Afghanistan. That is almost 106 kilometers. And this would be seventh in number. That is what you have to understand, right? Now, one thing which is really very important is the concept of national integration, right? So, starting the independence, from the independence, one of the very important agendas of the government was how to integrate this particular region with that of mainland India, right? Integrate in terms of the overall development paradigm, right? That has been one of the most important concerns for various governments. And for that, a lot of schemes have been laid down, a lot of missions have been laid down. But again, what you have to understand is that this particular region still suffers from a lot of disadvantages. Now, what is the significance of Northeast for India? The very first is that this serves as the strategic geopolitical location. Just look at this. I already told you that we have a lot of countries neighboring the Northeast region, right? We have China, we have Myanmar, we have Bhutan, we have Nepal, right? That itself makes this particular region very important from the lens of geopolitics, right? Now, this particular region serves as the land bridge to different countries, different adjoining countries, be it Myanmar, be it Bangladesh, right? Now, it is for that reason that we have Minister for External Affairs who have basically characterized this particular region, who have said that the Northeastern region is the gateway to the East, right? Also, what you have to understand is that, see, whenever we talk about different policies, let's say we had the Look East policy. Now, you need to tell me under whose prime ministership we had the inception of Look East policy. Then we had a reformed version in the form of Act East. One thing which you should always keep in mind is that for both these things, be it the Look East or the Act East, the Northeastern region serves as the platform, as the bedrock of these policies, right? And through the Northeastern region, we have more robust eastward engagement with different countries, right? Now, it is for that reason that many of the strategic projects have been started by India. For example, we have the India-Myanmar Thailand Trilateral Highway, right? So you can just see we have this particular highway starting from More in Manipur. Then we have through Myanmar via Mandalay, and then it goes to Thailand to Mysore. Now, this is one of the very important key strategic projects. Second important project is the Kaladan Multimodal Transport Project. Now, through a sea route, we are connecting Kolkata with that of Sitwe Port in Myanmar, and then through the land route, we are connecting it to the northeastern part of India. So these projects are very, very important. Please understand that it is not just about connectivity when we are talking about these projects. It is much more than that. Why? Because through these projects, India is trying to portray itself as a counterweight to China. We have a lot of these countries in Southeast Asia which have seen significant investments from China. Now, as a counterweight, as a more reliable partner, India is actually working upon these policies, upon these projects. Now, what is the next thing which makes Northeastern region important is its rich biodiversity and natural resources. This particular region is a part of the biodiversity hotspot of Indo-Burma, right? So this itself makes it very important considering the rich endemic species it has, be it the flora or the fauna, right? Now, again, it has a lot of diverse ecosystem ranging from the mountains to the hills, right? That makes it very important. And when we talk about the natural resources, it is a very rich source of different hydrocarbons, be it the coal, be it the petroleum reserves, be it the natural gas, right? You must have heard about that how Britishers tried to exploit the oil resources in Assam, right? Which to this day we are doing so. Then it has a lot of hydropower potential. Very, very important. According to some studies, northeastern India, it has a hydropower potential to the tune of 58 gigawatts. Now this tunes to almost 40% of India's hydropower potential. Can you imagine that almost 40% of India's hydropower potential is being provided by the Northeast India? Next aspect which you should understand is that we have what we say is TOT. That is, it is one of the very important sources of tea, very important source of oil, and very important source of timber, right? That is one of the acronyms which you can use. Next aspect is that of the cultural diversity. This particular region, the Northeast India, it boasts itself of having more than 200 ethnic groups. More than 200 ethnic groups. Can you imagine? And different ethnic groups along with different dialects. So this makes this particular region ethnically very rich. Popular festivals, for example, we have different. For example, we have the festival of Hornbill Festival, right? Then folk dances. Let's take the case of Bihu dance in Assam. Then sacred groves. So what you need to understand is that many of these states have these forests which are treated as sacred groves. For example, we have Omanglai, deity in Manipur, right? Which is a very important place of sacred groves. And these deities are worshipped in those sacred groves. Next important aspect is that all these factors make and contribute to India's pluralistic identity. See, India as a country, we always say that unity in diversity. We have always had this notion that India has always taken pride in having different languages, different cultures, different customs and tradition. Now, the rich cultural heritage of the Northeast India definitely adds to this pluralistic identity of India. And this cultural heritage, be it in form of the dances, be it in the form of handicrafts, be it in the form of, let's say, the culinary, the tastes, right? This enhances the potential of cultural tourism in the northeastern part of the country. Next aspect which you have to understand is that when we talk about the agricultural and horticultural production, or the potential which this particular region has, it is tremendous. You must have heard or read somewhere that we have the Sikkim as the organic state, right? So be it floriculture, be it medicinal plants, be it the organic farming, this region has a huge potential, primarily because of its diverse agroclimatic condition. This region offers different agroclimatic conditions well suited for different crops, be it medicinal crops, be it some of the other aromatic plants. So that makes this very important, and it has significant potential in that dimension. Next aspect is that of human resource. Why we are stressing upon the human resource is primarily for the reason that this particular region has a higher literacy rate than the average India's. So this particular region, that is northeastern India, it has the literacy rate of almost 78.5%, more than that of India's average literacy rate of 74%. Now what it means that this particular region offers very important demographic dividend. And we should basically invest in different aspects, be it the skill, be it the education, be it the health, so that we can capitalize upon this demographic dividend. That you have to understand. All these reasons make Northeast India very, very important. Now, what are the challenges with respect to India's Northeast? Very first is persistent insurgency and ethnic conflicts. See, I already told you that this region has a lot of tribal groups, specific ethnic groups. Now, because of that, what has happened is that there has been a constant source of tension among different tribal groups, different ethnic groups. And this has led to the insurgency, to the extent that they have had a sort of a war declared against the state. Many of these insurgent groups have said that they want to separate from the country, or they want more autonomy, right? So this is a kind of fissiparous tendency which we have witnessed in the Northeast, despite a lot of peace accords between different ethnic groups. For example, let's say we have ethnic group A and then we have ethnic group B. Again, we have had a lot of peace accords. Then we have also had peace accords between the government and these ethnic groups. Situation has not really improved, right? What you have to understand. For example, we have Nagaland. Now we have tribal groups, the Nagas, the ethnic Nagas, who say that they want to establish their own homeland, that is Nagaland. Or let's take the case of the NSCN group, or let's take the case of Alpha in Assam. So we have had all these, or let's take the case of All Tripura Tigers Front in Tripura. So we have all these different ethnic organizations, ethnic armed organizations, which have definitely caused a lot of social unrest in this particular region, right? Manipur and parts of Nagaland. Recently, what we witnessed in Manipur, we had the conflict between the Meiteis and the Kukis. And ultimately, because of that, right now we have the imposition of the precedent rule in the state of Manipur. See, again, what you have to understand is that there have been allegations also that different political parties have also tried to exploit these differences among different ethnic groups. Because ultimately what happens is when these political parties see that there are differences among different ethnic groups or tribal groups, they try to exploit these divisions because of the populist politics. And ultimately what happens is it leads to more social unrest. But not just social unrest, it also leads to misgovernance, which many commentators said, which many people said that we witnessed in Manipur. Now, inter-ethnic relations have not been good. Next aspect is that they hinder development and investments. Please understand that once you will have this situation of social unrest, definitely there would not be a possibility of development. And see, even the investors, be it the domestic investors or the foreign investors, they would not be really inclined to come and invest in that particular region. And what it would ultimately lead to is the cycle of underdevelopment, the cycle of unrest. And that would make the youngsters more prone to having these arms, right? So this is one of the very serious concerns. Next aspect is that of agricultural challenges. I already told you that we have had Sikkim as one of the states, as one of the pioneers in organic farming. But the issue is that the potential of this particular region, be it the organic farming or the floriculture or the horticulture, is limited. Now, it's not because there are some very serious reasons. It's just because of few factors. What are those factors? In most of these places, in most of these states of northeastern India, we have the middlemen, right? Middlemen. Now, what they do is that they are responsible for providing the adequate credit. They have a lot of credit with them. They are responsible to provide the supplies to these farmers. And ultimately, what happens is that when they supply the credit and they supply the other things, the various inputs for the farming, they are in the command of dictating the prices. And the farmers are not left with any option. That is one of the issues. Second aspect is, let's talk about the organic farming. Why organic farming has not been so much successful in these states like Sikkim and other states is because there is more inclination towards these chemical fertilizers because they enhance the productivity. And the farmers in this particular region, they do not have the adequate capital with them so that they can basically invest a lot in the organic farming. So these are some of the issues which you can basically write in the answers. Next aspect is that there has been a very serious concern with respect to the influence, the growing influence of China. And then we have had a lot of border disputes also. See, we have these northeastern states. They are adjoining some of the very important countries, neighboring countries of India, be it Myanmar, be it Bangladesh. So what has happened is that China, through its debt trap diplomacy, through its deep pockets, has given a lot of money, has provided a lot of investment opportunities in these countries, right? For example, let's take the case of Kyakfu port, right? So we have this particular port in Myanmar. And through this particular project, China is investing a lot of dollars in Myanmar, a lot of rupees in Myanmar. Now, this has caused concern for India. Because obviously, if you'll have these adjoining countries, and if in these countries you'll have a lot of investments coming from China, that is a strategic threat for India, right? There has been a very tremendous and exponential growth of Chinese investments in these adjoining countries. Take, for example, Nepal. Take, for example, Myanmar. So this is a strategic concern for India. Also, we have had a lot of border disputes. If you remember, we had the Doklam crisis of 2017. And recently in 2022, we had the clashes in Tawang, right? Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. So this is a source of constant conflict. And it is for that reason that the government of India is prioritizing investing in strategic projects in these states, primarily Arunachal Pradesh, right? Growing economic influence in all these countries around India. Next aspect is that of climate change and environment degradation. See, what has happened because of the global warming induced climate change is that there has been an erratic change in the weather patterns. And that has also been witnessed in the kinds of rainfalls the northeastern states are receiving. So you must know that we have Mawsynram in Meghalaya, what we call as Cherrapunji, which receives one of the highest rainfalls in the countries. Now, the overall, with time, the amount of rainfall has decreased, right? And there has been the increased instances of high intense rainfalls, with periodic gaps. So there has been the erratic rainfalls patterns. So this is because of the global warming induced climate change. Also take the case of the recent floods we had in Assam. Once we have floods in different areas, for example, let's take the case of Brahmaputra Valley or the Barak River. What happens is it not only affects the economy of that particular region, it has long-term effects because you need to obviously rehabilitate people. You need to basically go for the redevelopment of that particular region. So that is a very serious concern. Next aspect is that of the infrastructure deficit and connectivity issue. I already told you that when we talk about the northeastern region, it is just connected by this corridor, what we call as the Siliguri corridor, the chicken's neck, with respect to the mainland. So this poses a lot of challenges with respect to the logistics. So we find it quite difficult to transport supplies to the northeastern states. So that is a very serious concern, right? So when we talk about the road and the rail connectivity, intersay between different states, among different states in the northeastern region, that is one of the very serious concerns. Also, when we talk about the projects being implemented by India, take the case of the India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway, or take the case of Kaladan multimodal transit projects. There has been a very slow progress, and primarily it is because of India. So the kind of reasons which are attributed is the bureaucratic hurdles. There has been a slow mobilization of funds for these projects. So this has caused delay in the overall implementation of these projects, right? So again, understand that when we have the lack of physical infrastructure in terms of road, in terms of railways, in terms of power lines, it definitely has an impact on the social dimensions as well. For example, if we do not have adequate road connectivity, last mile connectivity, that would definitely impact the health parameters. We would see weak health parameters, or educational standards would not be that much, right? So again, the physical infrastructure has a negative. If we have a weak physical infrastructure, that definitely has a negative influence on the social parameters as well, indicators as well. The next issue is with respect to economic underdevelopment and unemployment. See, when we have weak physical infrastructure in terms of lack of road, lack of rail connectivity, lack of power lines, the investors are not really inclined to invest in this particular area. And when will not be having adequate investment, obviously there would not be adequate employment opportunities, and this would have an impact on the demographic dividend, what we call as the youngsters living in this particular area. So because of that, what we have also seen is that there has been an increasing trend of out-migration of these youngsters from the northeast to the mainland, right? And this is obviously affecting the overall development indicators in the northeastern region. And see, we have had different schemes. For example, Northeastern Industrial Development Scheme of 2017. Such schemes have had limited impact, primarily because, see, you need investors. And if you have social unrest, if you have misgovernance, if you have, so for example, the events like insurgency, definitely the investors would not be inclined to come and invest, and adequate employment opportunities would not be created. Next, because of that, there has been high youth unemployment. And when you will have these youth, a large section of the society, especially the youth, who are not having adequate employment opportunities, they would be more prone to attracting the arms, or they would be more prone to joining these insurgent groups, because these insurgent groups, what they do, they basically lure these youngsters with money, with other resources. So ultimately they have no option but to join these insurgent groups, and ultimately it fuels social unrest in the society. Next aspect is that of drug trafficking and cross-border crime. See, we all know that we have this golden triangle area, right? So this comprises of the countries of Myanmar, Thailand and Laos. Now this is a very important zone when we talk about the opium cultivation. And ultimately what happens is that this particular region has been the source of drug trafficking. And not just drug trafficking, but also similar organized crimes. Let's say the arms trafficking or human trafficking. So this has affected the overall stability in this particular region, right? And this has also affected the northeastern region. There have been increasing cases of seizures of drugs, and there has been increase in the seizures of drugs because these drugs are being transported from this particular area to the other parts of the world via the northeastern parts of the country, right? Next, there has been also the increased prevalence of drug addiction, and it not only affects their health, but overall social parameters are affected, right? Political instability and governance issues. Because of the unrest, because of the deliberate divisions in the societies being done by the political parties in the Northeast, what has happened is that it has led to misgovernance. It has led to policy paralysis. Because again and again, time and again, you are seeing new governments and there is no stability. So ultimately, it affects the development in the particular region. Also, we have had a lot of controversies with respect to a lot of government actions, be it the Citizenship Amendment Act. And this created conflicts between the communities in the northeastern parts of the country. So these are some of the very important issues which you must know. Now, what are the ways to strengthen the integration of Northeast India? Because ultimately, the objective, the agenda for successive governments has been how to integrate Northeast India and how to basically capitalize upon the potential of Northeast India, right? So the very first is Northeast to Southwest cultural exchange program. What we can primarily do is that if we are able to connect these northeastern states with that of the southwest, right, through the cultural exchange programs involving the students, involving the artists, involving the businessmen. So what would happen is it would lead to a more personal interaction. A lot of opportunities would be created. A lot of business opportunities would be created. See, ultimately, what we have to focus upon is developing those deep interactions, those deep personal relationships among the people. And that is really important. And for that, cultural exchange programs are really indispensable. So they would not only enhance the personal interaction, but also give a boost to the commercial aspect. Many of the businessmen, maybe from the southwest part of the country, be it Gujarat or Maharashtra, would be more inclined to invest in different enterprises. For example, let's say the floriculture, or let's say horticulture. We have, for example, in Meghalaya, the prevalence of the production of pineapples. So maybe there can be the industry which can be set up in Meghalaya with respect to the pineapple, with respect to the food processing. So these are some of the examples. Now, next aspect is to basically work upon the Digital Silk Road initiative. What we are trying to emphasize is on the fact that we have to invest on a huge scale with respect to digital connectivity in the northeastern region, with the kind of cutting edge digital infrastructure in this particular region. So that what it would do is that it would not only enhance the connectivity, that is the digital connectivity, but it would also make the demographic dividend, the youngsters, more skilled in different areas. See, again, the next frontier of technology is what? These emerging technologies, let's say artificial intelligence or machine learning. So we have to basically we have to upskill our youths in these domains. And for that, we need huge investments in the digital domain. Now, once this would happen, it would not only connect the northeastern region with that of the mainland country, but it would also serve the Northeast India as a base for the Southeast Asian countries. So maybe a lot of Southeast Asian countries can outsource some of the digital services to the northeastern states of India. So this is a very important step which should be taken, and this would not only enhance the digital connectivity but also provide the specialized digital skills to the youth of the country and connect further to different countries, be it Vietnam, be it Thailand, or be it other countries. Next aspect is Transnational Indigenous Knowledge University. The states in northeastern part of the country, they are rich in traditional medicines. They are rich in medicinal plants. They have different species of medicinal plants. So what we can do is we can set up a particular institution which basically focuses upon studying and preserving the indigenous culture, the traditional medicines, right? Or sustainable farming or the ecological conservation. So again, what we are trying to say is that once we'll focus upon the traditional knowledge, these people can basically get these traditional knowledge a proper intellectual property right, and ultimately they can commercialize these intellectual property rights and earn money. That is what we are trying to say. And this would not only enhance their returns, economic returns, but it would also serve as cultural and intellectual bridge. So why we are just focusing upon these states of northeastern India? We can also have interactions or collaborations with different institutes in Vietnam, let's say, or in Myanmar, or in different Southeast Asian countries, right? Next aspect is that of Northeast Olympic Training Center. We all know that in the Northeast India, people are really sport enthusiasts, right? So we should capitalize upon this. We need to provide these youths with adequate capacity in terms of the skills which are required for a particular sport. That is really needed. Sports enthusiasts must be encouraged, again, in the Northeastern region. And this will not only integrate the northeastern youngsters with that of the youngsters from the other states, but it would also enhance or give an impetus to the international coaches or the international bodies, and this would receive the attention of these bodies around the world. Floating markets tourism circuit. You must have seen that in Dal Lake in Kashmir, we have the floating boats where there is the sort of supply of kavas, tea or coffee, right? So this is a model which we generally see in the Southeast Asian countries, right? So we have this floating markets in countries like Thailand, in countries like Vietnam. So why can't we just emulate that with a proper Indian tinge, right? So this would enhance the overall tourism potential of the northeastern states. That can be done with unique Indian twist. And this would make the northeastern region a major tourist attraction. Next aspect is that of bamboo revolution program. See, why we are emphasizing on this particular commodity, that is bamboo, is because of its versatile character. Right? So bamboo is a particular commodity, a product which is versatile. It can be used as a textile. It can be used in construction. It can be used as a biofuel. So, and this particular region, the northeastern region, is it has a very good soil for the cultivation of bamboo. So this must be capitalized. Cultivation and product development in the northeast, eco-friendly innovation. So this would also give an impetus to different enterprises who are engaged in environmental domains, right? Then we can also focus upon Himalayan medicinal research corridor, specialized research and development corridor, where we are focusing upon traditional Himalayan medicine, right? Those medicines which the indigenous people of northeastern region know, right? And again, we can basically have an integration with that of the Ayurveda, with that of the Unani, or with that of the biotech companies. So again, we need more of interaction, right? Next aspect is autonomous vehicle testing ground. Why we are focusing upon autonomous vehicle testing ground is because of the rough terrains which are offered by the northeastern states. So the kind of terrains we have in the northeastern India. So many of the tech companies, many of the automobile manufacturers can make these areas in certain northeastern states as the testing grounds for their vehicles. So again, it would give a boost to the overall manufacturing potential of this particular region. So again, what we are trying to say is, in summation, that northeastern region, despite a lot of its advantages, be it the landscapes, be it the ethnic tribes, be it the cultural heritage, has suffered, and again, with some of the very serious issues, disadvantages. But different initiatives have been taken by the government, be it Bharatmala, be it the regional connectivity scheme, for example, the UDAN. But still what we say is that it has a lot of potential. So we need to just incorporate these things and make sure that we can adequately utilize the potential of northeastern states, including the demographic dividend which it offers. So this becomes really important. Let's have a mains practice question. The northeastern region of India holds immense strategic, cultural, economic significance for the country. However, it continues to face a range of challenges that hamper its full integration in the national mainstream. Discuss the importance of northeastern region for the India and the key challenges it faces, and suggest a holistic way forward. 15 marks, 250 words. Do write a particular answer on this question. And yes, if you're liking the initiative, do not forget to press the like button and do let us know through the comments also. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the appointment of the Supreme Court judges. So we have the Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Khanna, who is set to retire on May 13th. Now, what he has done is he has recommended to the government the name of Justice B.R. Gavai as the 52nd Chief Justice of India. So what we will see today is that what is this procedure of appointment of judges, what are the constitutional articles, and what are the different cases, right? Cases with respect to the concept of collegium system, which is really very important, right? So we'll see the procedure and we'll see what this concept is all about. This is a part of GS2 Judiciary. Now, let's go through the article because it itself provides a lot of valuable information. So we have Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Khanna, who is set to retire on May 13th. On Wednesday, recommended Justice B.R. Gavai's name to the government for the appointment as 52nd Chief Justice of India. Now, what you need to understand is, if Justice B.R. Gavai becomes the Chief Justice of India, he would hold the office for a period of almost 6 months. Justice Gavai is the next in line to be the Chief Justice of India in accordance with the seniority norm, with Chief Justice Khanna scheduled to retire on May 13th. Under the Memorandum of Procedure, very important, and we'll have a discussion what is this Memorandum of Procedure all about. For the appointment of Chief Justice of India and the Supreme Court judges, the Law Ministry seeks the recommendation of the outgoing Chief Justice about the next appointment, right? So it is the Law Ministry which seeks the opinion or the recommendation of the outgoing Chief Justice. The letter from the government kickstarts the appointment process for the next Chief Justice of India. Justice Gawai's father, Ramkrishna Suryabhan Gawai, also known as Dada Sahib, was a former governor of Bihar and a prominent Dalit leader. If the government notifies his appointment as the next Chief Justice of India, Justice Gawai would have a tenure of over 6 months. Justice Gawai, as the Supreme Court judge, was a part of very important decisions, and these are the important decisions which he took, including the upholding of the abrogation of Article 370, which provided the special status to Jammu Kashmir of the Constitution, and the striking down of the electoral bond schemes. Very impactful decisions. The judge laid down the pan-India guidelines against the illegal demolitions or the bulldozer culture of states. So he has had a lot of important, impactful decisions delivered. Now, let's go through this. See, we have Article 124 of the Indian Constitution, which basically talks about the establishment and constitution of Supreme Court. So primarily, it is Article 124, which guides the whole process. That is what you have to understand. And it has been through the successive interpretation of Article 124 that we have the current evolved process, what we call as the collegium system. That you have to understand. How are the Supreme Court judges appointed? So we have first, let's talk about the composition and strength of the Supreme Court. Originally, we had the number of total judges in the Supreme Court as 8. That is 1 Chief Justice and 7 other judges. With time, the Parliament enhanced the number of judges, and as of now, we have total number of judges as 34, which comprise of 1 Chief Justice and 33 other judges. That you have to understand. Next aspect is, now this particular information is really important from the aspects of prelims, because you'll be facing prelims exam very soon. So this becomes really important. Qualifications for the appointment as a judge. According to Article 124 subclause 3, a person can be appointed as the judge of the Supreme Court if he or she has the following qualifications. That is, a person must be a citizen of India, must have served as judge of a high court for at least 5 years or 2 such courts in successions. Alternatively, must have been an advocate of the high court for at least 10 years or 2 or more high courts in succession. Must be a distinguished jurist in the opinion of President. Please understand, when we talk about the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court, we have this particular and very important clause. That is the appointment of a distinguished jurist as a Supreme Court judge. We do not have this particular provision with respect to the high courts, do remember. Now, appointment. The judges of the Supreme Court are appointed by the President under clause 2 of the Article 124 of the Constitution. And this article itself, and this clause 2 itself, it provides that the President has to consult such judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts as he deems necessary. And please understand, if you know that we have had the National Judicial Appointments Commission, we have had the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, which tried to basically change the wordings, right? Which said that from now onwards, we will be having the NJAC, which would be deciding the appointments of the Supreme Court judges. That was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, right? So as of now, we have this particular wording in the Article 124 itself, which talks about the consultation process. And what is consultation? That has been interpreted by the Supreme Court in various cases. That you have to understand. The President consults with the judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts to make informed appointments. Now, let's talk about the oath of office. Very important. There can be a question with respect to this. Every appointed judge must make and subscribe to an oath before the President or an appointed person. Here is the crux. Generally, what we have seen is that the Chief Justice of India is sworn in by the President of India, and the other judges are sworn in by the Chief Justice of India. Because, again, understand why? Because the other judges, again, they are sworn in by the Chief Justice of India because it is the President of India who appoints the Chief Justice of India as the authority to basically look the oaths, to basically conduct the oaths of the other judges. That you have to understand. The oath includes commitment to uphold the Constitution, sovereignty and integrity of India and perform without fear or favor. One thing which is really important is that we have the 3rd schedule to the Indian Constitution. And the 3rd schedule basically prescribes a kind of oaths which are required. If you just look at the 4th oath, it mentions the oath with respect to the judges of the Supreme Court and CAG. So a very important information from the perspective of prelims is that we have the same oath for the judges of the Supreme Court as well as the Comptroller and Auditor General. Do remember, very important, right? Tenure and resignation. So there is no prescribed minimum age that you have to know for the judges appointment. A judge of the Supreme Court serves until they reach the age of 65 years. However, a judge can resign by submitting the resignation to the president. That you have to know. Now, what is this collegium system? See, we have already seen that it is on the basis of the consultation with respect to the judiciary that ultimately the president appoints the judges to the Supreme Court. But what is this consultation? How it is carried out? For that, we have a particular system. What we have is collegium system. Is the word collegium mentioned in the Constitution? The answer is a plain no. No, it is not mentioned in the Constitution. But it has evolved through various interpretations by the Supreme Court itself. Judges of the higher judiciary are appointed through the collegium system. The collegium consists of the Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. That is what you have to understand. As of now, the collegium is a 5-membered body which consists of the Chief Justice of India and the 4 other senior most judges, which decides upon the appointment, elevations and transfers of judges. So you can just understand that how powerful this particular body is, right? And it is because of that reasons that there have been a lot of criticism about the collegium system, lack of transparency, right? And you have a very powerful body deciding about the transfers, the elevations of judges. So this is a very serious point of issue. The term collegium is not mentioned in the Indian Constitution, but has been established through judicial pronouncements. What have been the chronology, or what is the chronology with respect to these judicial pronouncements? We have had the first case, what we generally call as the first judge's case of 1981. In this particular case, Supreme Court very clearly said that the primacy which is accorded to this consultation process, or the primacy which is accorded to the Chief Justice of India, when we talk about the consultation process, this is not absolute. This is not absolute. And this can be refused for cogent reason. What it means? Through the first judge's case, what really happened is that it gave the primacy to the executive with respect to judicial appointments, right? So what the judgment said, that if you have the Chief Justice of India, if he is basically recommending something, that is not really binding on the executive. So it basically gave an edge to the executive with respect to the judicial appointments. Then we have had, after 12 years, the second judge's case of 1993. This is the particular case which actually introduced this collegium system. And through this particular verdict, what the Supreme Court said, that the collegium system, in the collegium system, whatever the recommendations would be given, or the consultation which is mentioned in the Constitution, it actually means concurrence. That whatever recommendations are being given by the collegium system, by the collegium, they have to be basically, they are binding on the government, they are binding on the executive. So consultation over here means concurrence. That is what you have to understand. Not the CJI's individual opinion. So it is not about the individual opinion of CJI. What the collegium would consist of, the CJI and 2 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. So primarily 2 things are important. First is that through the second judge's case, the concept of collegium system came into being, which should comprise of the CJI and the 2 senior most judges. Second is that the word consultation, according to the Supreme Court through this particular case, the word consultation actually means concurrence. So the executive has to basically abide by what the judiciary says. Then in the third judge's case of 1998, the Supreme Court basically said on a presidential reference under Article 143, it's expanded this particular collegium. It said now it is a 3-member body. Now we'll expand it to a 5-member body. That is, we'll have the Chief Justice of India and the 4 senior most judges. That you have to understand. Ultimately, we had in 2015 what we commonly call as the 4th judge's case. Now see, through the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2014 and the National Judicial Appointments Commission Act of 2014, there was this particular process which was basically infused into the Constitution with respect to the appointment of judges. What the Supreme Court said is that it infringes upon the independence of the judiciary. This whole process of NJC, it infringes upon the independence of judiciary. Therefore, we declare it as null and void. So this was declared as unconstitutional in the year 2015 in the 4th judge's case. That is the whole chronology. So as of now, we have this particular collegium system, which is, this word collegium is not mentioned in the Constitution. It is through the different pronouncements of the judiciary, the interpretation of the judiciary, that you have to understand. What is this memorandum of procedure? It is nothing but a kind of a book or a set of rules and procedure which has to be followed, right? So it is a list of rules and procedures for the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court and High Courts. It's a document framed by the government and the judiciary together. So they have come up, they have had a lot of collaborations, consultations, and ultimately they have come up with this particular document that this is the kind of procedure which we would follow. The Union government framed a memorandum of procedure on 30th June 1999. It states that all the appointments of the judges to the Supreme Court must be recommended by the collegium composed of the Chief Justice and 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. This recommendation is then sent to the Law Ministry, to the central government. The Law Minister will then forward it to the Prime Minister, who would then advise the President for the appointment. That is the whole procedure. That is the reason what we call as Memorandum of Procedure. Also, we have had a revised MOP in the year 2015. The Supreme Court instructed the central government to come up with a new MOP which can basically enhance the overall transparency in the collegium's working. And in 2017, although the MOP was finalized, the government did not adopt it, citing a need to reconsider the matter. So as of now, we still follow the 1999 Memorandum of Procedure that you have to understand, right? So initially, we have Article 124, which talks about the establishment and constitution of Supreme Court. Then, on the basis of the interpretation of the word consultation, we have had different cases, primarily the first judge's case, second judge's case, and third judge's case. Through the second judge's case, we have had this inception of the collegium system, right? And ultimately, what you have to understand is the Memorandum of Procedure. That is really important with respect to this particular article. Let's have a mains practice question, a quite simple question. What do you mean by collegium system? Elaborate upon the various cases which led to the evolution of the collegium system. 10 marks, 150 words. Do write a particular answer on this question. Coming to the simplified section, we have the first topic which talks about the National Commission for Women, a very important statutory body for the protection of the rights of women in the country. Now, what has happened is that in Murshidabad district of West Bengal, we have had a lot of protests, primarily against the Waqf Amendment Act. And in these agitations, it was alleged that there were a lot of communal clashes. And in these communal clashes, a lot of women were harassed. Looking into this direction, considering this, what has happened, we have the National Commission for Women, which has asked to set up a particular inquiry on suo motu basis, on its own, right? So let's see what the inquiry would be, what the findings of the inquiry would be. But this makes National Commission for Women a very important body, especially for your prelims. The National Commission for Women has taken suo motu cognizance of the situation in West Bengal's Murshidabad districts and has formed a team to investigate the violence over the Waqf Amendment Act. The NCW stated that there were reports of women being harassed amid the communal clashes in the district. The statement actually said, the NCW chairperson has taken suo motu cognizance. This becomes really important. What it means is that the NCW is empowered to take actions on suo motu basis, on its own. That is, nobody is going and submitting the petition over there. It's on its own that the NCW is looking on this particular case. Cognizance of the deeply disturbing report from the Murshidabad district, West Bengal, where several women were reportedly molested amid communal violence, triggering the exodus of hundreds of women. Chairperson has also instituted the inquiry committee to investigate into this particular incident. Now, what is this particular commission? The NCW, the National Commission for Women, is an autonomous and statutory body. This is what you have to understand. It's a statutory body, an autonomous body, and was established in the year 1992 under the National Commission for Women's Act 1990 to protect and promote the women's right in India. That is the mandate of NCW. It is responsible for reviewing and addressing issues related to the rights of women and for making recommendations for the protection and promotion of these rights. So what you have to understand is that it's not just these cases of harassment or something which are taken care by the NCW. It's also the other cases. Maybe the NCW, through its reports and finding, can come up with new solutions, can come up with new recommendations which enhance the overall empowerment of the women in the society. NCW composition as per Section 3 of the NCW Act. The commissions shall consist of chairperson, 5 members and a member secretary who are nominated by the central government. So we have the chairperson who is committed to the cause of women, and we have 5 members. This is important. Amongst persons of ability, integrity and standing who have had experience in law or legislation, trade unionism, women's voluntary organizations, administration, health, education and other areas. At least 1 member shall be from amongst persons belonging to the SC and ST tribes respectively. So it basically calls for a diversified representation, right? And generally what we have seen is that the kind of composition, the kind of members who are a part of NCW, they really have had a lot of good experience with respect to the promotion and protection of women's right. Member secretary, generally you have a civil servant, a senior civil servant who is appointed as the member secretary, generally a senior IAS officer. Term, the chairperson and every member shall hold the office for a period of 3 years. Removal, the central government can, by an order, through an order, remove the chairperson or any other member if the particular person is basically subjected to these grounds. Now, what are the grounds for disqualification, or what we say is grounds for removal? First is adjudged and insolvent, has gone bankrupt, engages during his term of office in any paid employment, right? What it creates a conflict of interest, right? Refuses to act and becomes incapable of acting, is of unsound mind and is declared by a competent court, that is, has lost the senses, has so abused his office to render his continuance in office detrimental to the public interest, is convicted and sentenced to imprisonment for an offence in which the opinion of the central government involves moral turpitude. Obviously, we cannot have, let's say if a person has been convicted for an offence which basically calls for moral turpitude, definitely we cannot have the appointment of such a person to NCW. Now, next aspect is, what are the functions and responsibilities of National Commission for Women? As per Section 10 of the NCW Act 1990, the Commission shall perform any of the following functions. This is important. First is investigation and examination of all matters relating to the safeguards provided for the women under the Constitution or any law. Let's say we have Domestic Violence Act, right? Or let's say we have the dowry, right? So again, we have these safeguards which are provided in different laws, different provisions in different laws, or be it the Constitution. So it makes sure, the NCW makes sure that we have a proper, robust implementation of these laws. And if there is an infringement, it basically investigates and examines those cases. Present to the central government annually reports on the working of these safeguards, make in such reports and recommendations for the effective implementation of those safeguards for improving the conditions of women by the union or the state, review the existing provisions of the Constitution and other laws affecting women and recommend amendments thereto so as to suggest remedial legislative measures to meet any lacunae, any gaps, inadequacies or shortcomings in such legislations. Take up the cases of violations of the provisions of the Constitution and other laws relating to women with appropriate authorities. Now, this is really important. Look into complaints and take suo motu notice, which it has done in this particular case of Murshidabad, relating to the deprivation of women's rights and non-implementation of laws enacted to provide protection to women. Undertake promotional and educational research, participate and advise on the planning process of socio-economic development of women. So also it can give recommendations with respect to enhancing the livelihood opportunities of women, or let's say how to make the self-help group movement more robust in the country. Definitely it can give recommendations to the government, either the state governments or also the central government. National Commission for Women, so it has the powers of a civil court, what we call as quasi-judicial body, right? Summoning and enforcing the attendance of any person from any part of the country, requiring the discovery and production of any document from any public office, receiving the evidence on affidavits, requisitioning any public record or copy thereof from any court or office, issuing the commissions for the examination of witnesses and documents. So this makes NCW a quite powerful body, and it has had a lot of successes, but definitely there are areas of concerns also with respect to the functioning of NCW, because there have been allegations that NCW has in many times acted on the directives of the central government, right? So this makes this particular body really important, and there can be a probable question in the prelims also. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the importance of Urdu as a language. So in a particular case, we have the Supreme Court, which has emphasized the importance of Urdu as a language. And what it has said is that we cannot associate a particular language with that to any religion. That is, language is not religion. Language is a part of culture. It's a more broad identity, and we should not have that narrow perspective by looking at a particular language from that lens of religion. That is what the Supreme Court has said. And it has also emphasized on the fact that Urdu is a language which basically represents the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. That is what you have to understand, right? Very important part of the Indian society, can be used in your answers. The Supreme Court has said that it is pitiable digression from reality to believe that Hindi is a language of Hindus and Urdu is that of the Muslims. A language is only a means of communication and does not represent a religion. Very beautiful words said by the Supreme Court. Language is not religion. Language does not even represent religion. Language belongs to a community, to a region, to people, and not to religion. Language is culture. Very important. Language is a yardstick to measure the civilizational march of a community and its people. So is the case of Urdu, which is the finest specimen, finest example of Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb or the Hindustani Tehzeeb, which is the composite culture. So ultimately we have the evolution of Urdu. How Urdu has evolved is primarily a mix of Hindi and Persian, right? So it involves a composite culture of the people, not the religion per se. That you have to understand, which is the composite cultural ethos of the plains of northern and central India. Now, again, why the Supreme Court has said about this is because there was an appeal which was filed in the Supreme Court. An appeal was filed against the use of Urdu on the signboard of a new building of the Municipal Council, Patur, in Akola, district of Maharashtra. The signage, Municipal Council, Patur, was written in Marathi and then in Urdu, and ultimately we have had these contentions and petition was filed. Now, the court said Urdu was not an alien language, first of all. It was born and nurtured in India itself. So what you have to always remember is that Urdu as a language is not a foreign language. We itself, like Hindi was evolved in India, Urdu was also evolved in India. That you have to understand. And reached greater refinement and became a language of choice for the poets in India. The prejudice against Urdu stems from the misconception that Urdu is alien to India. This opinion, we are afraid, is incorrect, as Urdu, like Marathi or Hindi, is Indo-Aryan language. Look at the kind of good words used by the Supreme Court. The court said Hindi and Urdu were fundamentally one language. When we criticize Urdu, we are in a way also criticizing the Hindi. True, Urdu is mainly written in Nastaliq, that is the kind of script which we use, and Hindi in Devanagari script, but then scripts do not make a language. What makes language distinct is their syntax, their grammar, and their phonology. Urdu and Hindi have broad similarities in these counts. The fusion of two languages, Hindi and Urdu, met a roadblock in the form of Puritans on the both sides, that is Orthodox on the both sides, and Hindi became more Sanskritized and Urdu became more Persian. That is what the court has said. Now, it is also time to look at some of the very important articles which talk about the language aspect in the Constitution. So, we have part 17 of the Constitution of India, which talks about the official languages from article 343 till 351. What does article 343 subclause 1 talks about? It basically gives the official language of the Union. The official language of the Union shall be Hindi in Devanagari script. Remember, the forms of numerals to be used would be the international form of Indian numerals. So what we would use is the international form of Indian numerals. Article 343 subclause 2 talks about that for a period of 15 years from the commencement of the Constitution, the English language shall continue to be used for all the official purposes of the Union, for which it was being used immediately before the commencement. However, the President may authorize the use of Hindi language in addition to the English language for any of the official purposes of the Union. Right? So we have Hindi and English as the official language that you have to understand. Article 344, Official Language Commission to be instituted by the President. Next, we have Article 345. Now, these articles basically talk about the language which are to be used at the state level. So, what it says is the legislature of a state can basically adopt any one or more of the languages which is used in that particular state or Hindi as the official language of the state. Article 346 talks about the communication. That is how the communication is to be carried out between one state or the other, or the state and the union. 347, President can direct any language that shall be officially recognized throughout the state or any part of the state. Now, next we have the language of the judiciary. So we have Article 348 subclause 1, which says that until the Parliament provides, English shall be used for all the proceedings in the Supreme Court and in every High Court. The authoritative text of all the bills and ordinances shall be in English language. Then we have Article 348 subclause 2, which says the governor of the state, with the previous consent of the President, authorize the use of Hindi language or any other language to be used for official purposes of the state in the proceedings of the High Court. So only in the proceedings you can use that particular language which is used in the state. Ultimately, in the judgments, decrees and orders of the High Court, they must be in English only. Then we have Article 348 subclause 3. It says a state legislature can prescribe the use of any language other than English with respect to bills, acts and ordinances. However, the translation of the same must be in English language. Then we have certain special directives. For example, we have Article 350, which talks about the language to be used in the representation for redress of grievances. That is, nobody would be forced to use a particular language if that person wants to get the redressal of a particular grievance, right? 350 capital A, facilities for the instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage, so as to enhance the overall cognitive development of the children at the primary level, right? 350B, capital B, subclause 1, special officer for the linguistic minorities, very important. 351, directive for the development of Hindi languages. So these are some of the very important articles which are related with the language. Next aspect of the 8th schedule basically consists of the 22 languages, right? So there are different languages, for example, Assamese, Bengali, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Odia, and we also have Urdu as a part of the 22 languages which are there in the 8th schedule. What are the benefits if a particular language is there in the 8th schedule? The National Sahitya Academy recognizes the languages of the schedule as literary languages by default. Second, the 8th schedule has played an important role as an arbitrator in deciding the medium of instruction in secondary schools. The languages used should be modern Indian languages mentioned in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. So we can have the pedagogy, the teaching instructions in these languages in different schools. All India level competitive examinations are conducted for the entrance into higher and technical education and employment by different organizations. The 8th schedule languages are used by them in selected spheres. So these are some of the important points with respect to the languages mentioned in the 8th schedule. Urdu is also a part of it. So we should give due recognition to different languages and should not consider a particular language as a part of a religion. So it is a part of culture, not religion. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, we have a particular news coming from the World Trade Organization. Now, this is a very, very important international body. Now, WTO has basically forecasted that there would be a slowdown in the global merchandise trade, primarily because of the adoption of reciprocal tariffs by the US on different countries around the world. So this would shrink the overall merchandise trade around the world, and ultimately it would bring in recessionary trends. So we have a particular report by WTO which has talked about this, right? We'll see what WTO is all about, and we'll also look into what have been the forecasts with respect to this particular scenario. So the World Trade Organization on Wednesday revised sharply its global merchandise trade volume growth forecast for 2025 from a continued expansion it expected when this particular year started, this year dawned, to a decline by 0.2% amid fears over the US tariff developments. So this number might seem very small, 0.2, 0.1%, but as a percentage of the cumulative trade, it amounts to a huge value that you have to understand in absolute terms. The volume of the world merchandise trade is expected to decline by 0.2% under the current conditions, which would be nearly 3 percentage points lower than what would have been expected under the low tariff baseline scenario. This could also even shrink further to 1.5% in 2025 if the situation deteriorates, it said in the Global Trade Outlook and Statistics report. There have been many times questions coming in this area that which is the body which publishes this particular report. So this is very important. So this particular report has been published by WTO. Do remember, Global Trade Outlook and Statistics report. Do remember. It again said that if the US goes ahead with the reciprocal tariffs, it expects the move would reduce global merchandise trade volume growth by almost 0.6 percentage points this particular year. Earlier on Wednesday, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, what we call as UNTAD, right? So do let me know in the comment section that which is a very, very important report which is published by United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. I would be really happy. Do let me know. It expected the global growth to slow down to 2.3% in 2025. This will mark a shift towards a recessionary path. That is, we'll have lower jobs, right? And ultimately, it would lead to more distrust in the society. That is what the recessionary trend would be. Now, let's talk about the World Trade Organization. See, please understand that we have had many of these developed countries, for example, the US, who initially talked about open markets, talked about free trade, and they've had a lot of negotiations. For example, let's take the case of Eurogay round. So ultimately what we saw was that the formalization of the GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. So primarily it was in the year 1995 that we had the formation of World Trade Organization to basically streamline the rules and regulations with respect to the international trade. So that what would be the rules for a free and fair trade? Now, one thing which you should understand is that most of these developed countries have focused upon this word free trade, but they have not adequately focused upon the fair aspect of trade. And ultimately what US is doing, US is looking at its own selfish gains, right? And again, it has its own reasons for that, but it is a reason for tension for different LDCs, least developing countries and even developing countries around the world, right? So this particular organization becomes really important. And yes, one thing more, that US has also casted doubts with respect to the efficiency and functioning of WTO. And it is for that reason that it has not basically given its approval with respect to the appointment of judges in the appellate body, which basically is a conflict resolution mechanism, a very important conflict resolution mechanism in the WTO. WTO is an international institution formed to regulate the rules for global trade among the nations. It was formed under the Marrakesh Agreement. Do remember, because these words are generally used in the prelims. Marrakesh Agreement signed on 15th April 1994 by 123 countries after the Uruguay round, from which basically started in 1986 and went till 1994, of the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, leading to the birth of WTO in 1995. And primarily it was in the year 2001 that we had the joining of China in the World Trade Organization, and that too on the insistence of the US. WTO succeeded the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, which had regulated the world trade since 1948. GATT focused on trade in goods, while WTO covers more aspects. So GATT had just a focus on the goods, but WTO has a more broad range, that is goods, services, IP, intellectual property, including creations, design, inventions. So it has a more broad range. Headquarters are in Geneva, that's in Switzerland. Members, 166 countries representing 98% of the global trade. Key bodies, first is Ministerial Conference. So this is the highest decision-making body, comprises of all the members of the WTO, right? And in WTO, most of the decisions are taken on a consensus basis, that you have to understand. Now, see, we have the another body as a dispute settlement body. The Ministerial Conference itself acts as the dispute settlement body to resolve the trade disputes. If the disputes are not resolved, then it ultimately goes to the appellate body. That you have to understand, right? So if you just look at the structure, we have the Ministerial Conference, the General Council, and again, we have the dispute settlement body. So the General Council itself acts as the dispute settlement body, and ultimately, it also sometimes acts as a trade policy review board. If the dispute is not resolved to the dispute settlement, then the dispute can basically be resolved through the appellate body, right? That you have to understand. Key WTO agreements: TRIMS, that is trade-related investment measures, prohibits measures that discriminate against foreign products. For example, there can be the requirement of local production. That basically is creating a barrier for international investors. That is one of the things. TRIPS, trade-related intellectual property rights, right? So intellectual property is really important. We have a lot of electronics, we have different things. So IP is really very important. Resolves dispute over the intellectual property rights. Agreement on agriculture, promotes agriculture trade liberalization. And because of that, India has also suffered, right? And we right now are having this peace clause, focusing on market access and domestic support. Other agreements, for example, we have the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, General Agreement on Trade and Services, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, right? So these are some of the areas which you should understand. And WTO as a body, do remember the kind of report which I just mentioned. It's the global trade outlook and statistics report, which talks about the slowdown in the merchandise trade. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the recognition of type 5 diabetes by the International Diabetes Federation as a new form of disease. See, generally when we think about diabetes, it's the type 2 diabetes, which is most general, in which we have the production of the insulin by the pancreas, but the body is resistant to that particular insulin. In type diabetes, what happens is that it is primarily a result of malnourishment, right? And this was for years misdiagnosed, and this was not taken proper care of. But ultimately, now we have the recognition of type 5 diabetes as one of the forms of diabetes. We have a particular article in the Indian Express, which basically talks about the various aspects of type 5 diabetes, beautifully explained. Let's look into this. Type 5 diabetes, which affects the lean and undernourished young adults in the low and middle income countries, has now been recognized as a particular form of disease by the International Diabetes Federation. Neglected for decades in research and frequently misdiagnosed, it has taken a long time for type 5 diabetes caused by malnutrition induced lowering of insulin production. So if there's a proper statement in the prelims that how we have this type 5 diabetes, it's primarily because of the less production of the insulin because of the malnourishment in that particular human. It's a form of diabetes affecting lean and malnourished teenagers and young adults in low and middle income countries. The disease causes pancreatic beta cells to function abnormally, leading to insufficient production of insulin. This is unlike type 2 diabetes, the most prevalent form of disease, where the main problem is insulin resistance. That is, while the pancreas continue to produce the insulin, the body is not responsive. The body is not responding properly to the hormone. On April 7th, it was officially recognized at the 75th Congress for the Diabetes in Bangkok. Now, this is not a new disease, and it was first reported in Jamaica in 1955. In 1985, the World Health Organization classified the condition as malnutrition-related diabetes mellitus. This classification was done away with in 1999 for the want of evidence. Its official recognition comes on the back of recent research, which has brought renewed attention to the impact of malnourishment on pancreatic development and insulin function. So malnutrition has a lot of negative impact on the overall body. Just see that it has the impact, a negative impact on the functioning of the pancreas, and ultimately leading to the diabetes, particularly in individuals with poor nutrition in childhood and adulthood. What are the markers of type 5 diabetes? This unique form of diabetes observed in Asian Indians has no evidence of autoimmune or genetic causes. We have most of these individuals who have lower body mass index BMI. Insulin secretion is severely reduced. Malnutrition all begins in the womb. If a baby does not get the right amount of nutrition while growing in the womb, it can increase the risk of diabetes later in the life. Right? So that's the reason we say that even the pregnant women, they need to have adequate nutrition so that there are less chances for the child to develop these kinds of disease. When the baby is under or overnourished before the birth and then gains too much weight, later it can lead to type 2 diabetes. But if the baby stays undernourished both before and after the birth, it can lead to malnutrition-induced diabetes. A high protein, what is really required? A high protein diet is important. Depending on the person's low BMI and physical activity levels, an adequate level of carbohydrates and fats are also needed to ensure the weight gain. So these are the remedial measures which can be used. So this is what you need to know with respect to type 5 diabetes. Let's go to the last topic of the day. So coming to the last article of the day, this is with respect to the criticism against the NCERT. So we have the Kerala Education Minister who has said that NCERT is using the Hindi names for the English textbooks. Now, this is one of the aspects which basically points towards the center-state disputes, the issues with respect to the federal aspect. And according to the minister, it also infringes the constitutional values, right? So this makes the NCERT a very, very important body, and we have been reading it for many years. So definitely we'll see that what NCERT is and what it does. Before that, let's go through the article. Language textbooks have been named after musical instruments and classical ragas because these elements of India's rich musical heritage are common across all linguistic and cultural traditions. And this has been criticized by the Kerala Education Minister, who has said that Hindi names are being taken for English textbooks. And this is against the federal principles and constitutional values. And this is absolutely wrong according to the minister. NCERT has said that language books were named after Indian musical instruments such as bansuri, malhar, sarangi, mridang, veena. This approach aligns with the vision of National Education Policy 2020, which is itself at this particular point of dispute, emphasizing joyful learning, cultural rootedness, and integration of arts and music into the education. The National Curriculum Framework for School Education 2023 has also been published by the NCERT, right? So the example which is given here is the class 1 and 2 English textbooks are called Mridang, right? The mathematics textbook titled Ganit Prakash draws from India's rich mathematical heritage. So this is how Hindi names have been taken for these NCERT books. Now let's go through the NCERT. Now NCERT is an autonomous organization set up in the year 1961 under the Societies Registration Act of 1860. What is really important to note is that NCERT is not a statutory organization. It was set up through an executive resolution in the year 1961 as a society under the Societies Registration Act by the Government of India to assist and advise the central and the state governments. So not just the central government, but also the state governments on policies and programs for qualitative improvement in school education. Do remember, NCERT is for school education, right? The major objectives of NCERT and its constituent units include undertake, promote, coordinate research in areas related to the school education, prepare and publish the model textbooks, what we generally study, supplementary material, newsletters, journals, organize the pre-service and in-service training of teachers, develop and disseminate innovative educational techniques, collaborate and network with state educational departments. We have different state education boards. So NCERT also coordinates with them, right? NGOs and other educational institutions. Then it also acts as a clearinghouse for the ideas and information in matters related to the school education and acts as a nodal agency for achieving the goals of universalization of elementary education. As per the National Education Policy 2020, it acts as a nodal agency to develop the National Curriculum Framework for Early Childhood Care and Education. Important. We have the National Curriculum Framework for the school education, definitely carried out by the NCERT. But in addition to that, we have the Early Childhood Care and Education, a part of National Education Policy, right? So this is also being looked after by the NCERT. The NCERT has been granted the status of deemed to be university. So if it has been given this particular status, it can have its own courses, graduate courses, postgraduate courses. It can also, award the PhD degrees by the central government recently for its excellence in new or emerging area of knowledge. NCERT is an implementation agency under bilateral cultural programs with other countries in the field of school education. So let's say if we have the interaction between India and some other country with respect to school education. So NCERT would be the agency which would be collaborating or which would be basically leading the delegation from India with respect to the school education aspect. So this is what you have to understand. Remember, it's not a statutory organization. It was set up through an executive resolution in the year 1961 as a society. It's an autonomous organization. That is it for today. I hope you really enjoyed the session. If you did, do not forget to press the like button and do let us know through the comments. Thank you so much. All the very best.